Today's projects are going to be an ink pen and an artist/workshop pencil. The ink pen we're going to make out of this piece of acrylic, which is called Rage Red, which should be real nice. And on the ink pen we're going to use this piece of maple, which in and of itself will probably be kind of boring, so we'll put a Celtic knot or some other embellishment on that to make that look a little bit nicer. We have in the lathe the Beal collet chuck, which is going to be used to hold our pen mandrel. If I get it back, decided to take off here. The pen mandrel goes into the collet chuck like that. We tighten that side up. The opposite end will go into the live center from Penn State Industries, which pushes up against the bushings on the pen and holds them real firm. So we'll show that once we get going. So let me get set up and we'll get started with our pen and pencil. To get started on our Celtic knot for our pen, I've taken my combination square and I drew a 45-degree line across all four faces of the maple blank. I'm going to take that to the bandsaw and I'm going to make a saw curve on that 45-degree line. And in that saw curve I'm going to glue in some 3 pieces of veneer, which are red, white, and blue veneers. That will make our pencil look a lot nicer. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Okay, we've glued in the first set of veneer. I know it doesn't look like much. I use super glue, CA glue. It's kind of a mess right now, but that's the process. You make that curve cut on the bandsaw and glue in the 3 pieces of veneer, and then once we do that on all 4 sides, we'll be ready to put it on a lathe and turn it into a pencil. Okay, here's our maple blank with our veneer glued in for our Celtic knot. Sure doesn't look like much now, and it's covered with CA glue, and if I remember correctly, I only glued my fingers to the project twice, so that's pretty good for me when I'm dealing with super glue. So we're going to let this dry for a little while, then we'll get started on the turning it, but first we'll go ahead and start on the acrylic blank for the ink pen. Okay, we're going to get ready and drill a hole through the center of this acrylic piece for our ink pen. Inside that we glue this brass tube, which will go there. I have on the Jacob's chuck, I have a 27/64 drill bit, which is the size we need for this particular brass tube. I have it marked so that I don't drill all the way through the blank. Usually what happens is that I drill through the end of these and then it blows out down here at the bottom and kind of makes a mess. So what I'll do is I'll drill till I reach to my little temporary stop here, which is my indicator, which is a piece of blue painter's tape. And then that'll not go all the way through the blank, but yet it's still more than long enough for our brass tube. So when I do that, then I'll take it to the drill press and I'll cut the end of it off, and then we'll be able to glue in the brass tube. I'm going to use this chuck these jaws in my chuck here to hold it. Now, one of the things I thought I would do is try and drill this. Let me move this light here so I can get this tail stock up here. We'll center up this piece of acrylic on that. I have a center mark there, and I'll just put the point of the drill bit on it. And then we can take our chuck key and we'll tighten this chuck up if I turn it the right way. So then that'll go in there like that. What we'll do then is we just advance the tail stock, and then that will drill that hole through that blank. It might take us a couple of tries, but we'll make it through there eventually. So hold on for that. Okay, we're going to turn the lathe on and drill this out. I got the lathe set at its lowest speed so we don't melt this plastic too much. So we'll just start drilling in there. So I lock the tailstock down. It's always important to clear the chips out as we drill this, so we back out every now and then and get those pieces off of there. We'll continue to drill. It's like drilling through a big piece of plastic here. So normally this bit clears itself out pretty good, but the deeper we get, the more it'll need to be cleaned. We're doing pretty well. Continue on here till we get to our depth stop. Reached the end of my travel on my tailstock, so we'll move the tailstock a little bit closer and then continue drilling it. We'll loosen that up. Oops, sorry about that. Slide the tailstock up and continue drilling until we get to our blue tape. You see now the chips aren't coming out as easily as they were before, so let me keep an eye on it, make sure nothing gets clogged up in there. Off of there. Just protesting a little bit. We'll go a little deeper with our move our tail stuck up a little bit, tail stock up a little bit closer, and we can finish till we get to the end of the cut here. Alright, we reached the tape, so let's pull this back. So with that, we've got a pretty much a centered hole there, but shouldn't come out the other side if we did everything right, and it did not. So got just a little bit of a point there where the tip started, or the bit started to go through, but that was pretty successful, so we'll get set up and we'll drill the one in our maple blank. Okay, here was our maple blank in the chuck. I went ahead and drilled this one already. It was very noisy, a lot of protesting, so it would have made a terrible sound on the video. So the only thing I did different on this one, because the blank is so much longer and the tube is so much longer, I went ahead and set the bit so that once I got to the Jacob's chuck, that was as deep as I wanted to go, so that just went in there, and then we drilled it out just like we drilled the other one. So we'll get that out of there, and let's see. We take that out of there. We have I can get it out of there. So we have a hole in that one with our that our tube goes down into, and then we'll glue that in there. So that'll be the next step, is gluing those tubes inside of the tube blanks so we can mount them on the lathe and turn this a pen and a pencil. Okay, we're getting ready to glue these tubes inside to the blanks that we've cut and drilled. What I've done is I've taken 5-minute epoxy, and I put equal amounts in the bottom of this little cup here, and I've added several drops of India ink. And the reason I do that, well, I'm going to try it, I don't know if it's going to work or not, is a lot of times when I turn this acrylic so thin that the glue kind of telegraphs through the blank, and I don't like that. So I thought maybe if I colored the epoxy and made it black, then maybe it wouldn't look quite so bad. So I just got an acid brush here, and we're going to take and we'll put this on our little pin insertion tube tool here. We'll take some of the epoxy, and we'll, if I can get rid of and we'll just paint that on there. We'll see. I'm not quite sure this is how this is going to work out, but either way, even if it doesn't, still shows through, I mean, the epoxy is going to hold it in there well enough. So Alright, we succeeded in making a mess out of that one, so let's go ahead and we'll stick that tube in there and try not to get much of it on our fingers. We'll push that down in just a little bit. Alright, we'll let that one sit there. We'll take the larger one for our maple blank and we'll basically do the same thing here. We'll put some epoxy on it. I've sanded these a little bit with some, I think it was 220 sandpaper, just to rough them up so the epoxy has something to bite into when it's holding it inside the pen blank. So we'll paint this on here. Sure makes a mess. Alright, we got a good coating on there. Let's put this out of the way. And we'll go ahead and push this one into this tube. Of course, quite a bit of it pushes out, but we'll just let that sit on there. We got to push it down just a little bit below the edge there. And we'll take and wipe some of that off. And now the only thing we have to do now is let that epoxy dry, which, if it's true to his name, should only take 5 minutes. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to trim up the end of this acrylic blank, which is mounted back into the chuck. You notice when I glued those in there, I had neglected to cut off the end of the blank to expose the other end of the tube, which I should have done before I glued them in there, but yeah, it worked out all right. I took it to the bandsaw and trimmed it off. I could have got this one a little bit closer to the tube, but it'll work out. We're going to trim the end of this blank up with this barrel trimmer. What happens is this part here is sized to match the inside of the brass tube that we glued in there. So what we do is we bring that up there like that, and we'll turn this around, and these cutters on the edge of this thing here will true the end of this face up, make it 90 degrees to the end of the tube, so when we put our bushings on and start to turn this pen, everything will fit together like it's supposed to. So let's turn the lathe on and see what we can do. Alright, we don't want that going around. So let's turn this in here and try and true up the end of this blank. We'll do it slowly here. We just want to get down to where we see the end of the brass tube. Then I could have probably trimmed this one a little bit closer to the tube, but I didn't. So let's see. Okay. We can see the end of the brass tube there, so let's turn this off. Alright, so we got that down where we want it. Let's take it out. Take this part out of the lathe. I'll show you the brass tube here. So you can see we got it down, trim flush on the end till we got down to the brass tube. We're going to do it on this end. It's a little bit more of a mess because of all that epoxy we put on there, but that's another thing it does too. The trimmer cleans up the inside of the pen blank, so if there's any glue or anything stuck inside there, it cleans that all up. So we'll reset this. This side, like I said, is a little bit sticky from the epoxy yet, so we'll see what happens here. Alright, let's push it in a little bit more. Lock down the tailstock. And let's trim this end off. This one should be closer since we didn't push the tube in all that far. We'll get to the end of the Okay, we pretty much got down to that. Need to be wiped off a little bit. That glue's a little bit sticky in there still. So we got that. We got that end trimmed down to the tube. We got that end trimmed down to the tube. So we'll get set up and do the same thing with the maple blank. All right, we're finally ready to turn something here. We have the collet chuck back on the lathe, and it's tightened up around our pin mandrel, which we have on there nice and tight. First thing I want to put on is this little spacer bushing that I've used on a previous pin that I don't use anymore. The next thing is the bushing for the pin blank. We'll slide that on there. Opposite pin blank, another spacer. And then we'll slide the tailstock up. And with that live center, like I said, it kind of goes, the pin mandrel goes through the live center, and it puts good pressure on the bushings there, so that works pretty good. All right, we got it nice and tight. We'll slide our tool rest up as close as we can get it. Give me a little bit of grief. There we go. What I normally use to turn these acrylic blanks is a skew. These are kind of brittle in the corners with a gouge. Sometimes you could take a big chunk out and take off more than you planned on, so I usually use this to turn them in it works pretty well. So let's give it a go here. We'll get it started and then we'll crank the lathe speed up and see what happens. Alright, here we go. All we're doing now is taking out the corner of this blank. The more the corner we take off and the rounder it gets, the bigger chips will get coming off. And eventually gets to where we get long streamers shooting off the blank. See there, we've got down to where we trimmed that into that blank up with our barrel trimmer. So let's get that side down as well. Parts are coming off of there. So we're getting longer shavings now coming off of it. Let's take a little bit off of this way. See how we're doing. Okay, you can see we got the corners mostly knocked off and it's starting to be round. We need to lower the tool rest a little bit while we bad news is we got to waste a lot of this to get it down to the bushings there, so I'll go ahead and shut the camera off and get it most of the way down, and then we'll pick it up when we're ready to do the final trimming and sanding on it. Okay, we've turned this down quite a bit, and we'll go ahead and show how to finish it up here. So I'll take and use a skew like this for most of it to get it trimmed up, but then when I get close by, I just kind of use it as a scraping motion and kind of finish it down to that. Now we want to get it down to the size of these bushings here. Some people make different designs on them and whatnot. I'm just kind of I don't know, I just keep them pretty straight. So in this particular pin, it's not very long. That's the only turn piece that we have. So let's go ahead and get this down to where we're ready to do some sanding. They tend to get wound up around the mandrel. You gotta take and clean them off there so you can see what you're doing. Alright, we're getting pretty close on this end, so we need to take a little bit more off of this side. Alright, that's all I want to do with this skew that way. I can feel we still need to take some more off, but we'll switch it and try and use it as a scraper motion here to This more peels it off and kind of, not nice layers like it comes off with it using it the other way, but it also takes off less and we got less chance of messing this up since we came this far. I just use my calibrated fingers to see how close I am to that. I'm going to take off a little bit more. The closer we get it, the less sanding we do, which is always a good thing. Sanding is not a lot of fun. Let's see how we do it here. All right, we're in pretty good shape. We got it turned down to where it's got just a little bit above the mandrel. So what I'm gonna do now is get set up and do a little sanding on it, and we'll show that here in a little bit. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You took a perfectly nice looking pen blank and messed it up here somehow. What I did was I took some 220 grit sandpaper and I basically did some rough sanding on it to get it down to where it's almost the size of the bushing. What we're going to use is these pads. Are called micro mesh. It starts at 1500 grit and there's a stack of them here, and the last one is 12,000 grit. So what we're going to do is basically polish this blank to make it shiny again. Well, some people do it dry. You can do it that way, but I like to do it wet sand it. So we got some water down here. We're gonna get our little pad wet, and then we'll turn the lathe on and we'll sand a couple of things. Bottom line, the goal is with this 1500 grit just to finish it up and get it down to the final dimension that we want it to be with to the bushings. Just kind of sand away. We need a little bit more water. It gets to be kind of messy, so I got the lathe bed covered up with some piece of newspaper and some paper towels. You can see just with that 1500 grit, we've kind of cleaned the blank up a little bit, so it's starting to look a little bit nicer than it did earlier. So we'll continue on, and then when I get to the last grid, I'll turn the camera back on and show you how we polish it up. Okay, we've worked our way through the grits on the micro mesh. We're up to the last one, which is, like I said earlier, is 12,000 grit. Our blank is nice and smooth, and I think it's starting to look really nice. Let's finish this up. Really just a final smoothing process here. It doesn't really take too much. And some folks will go ahead and put some plastic wax on it, or a wax for plastic, and buff that up, but I never felt the need after I get it turned to sand it to the 12,000 grit. I never felt the need to put any additional waxes or finishes on it or anything like that. So I think we should be pretty much good here. Let's shut it off and take a look at it. Let me get it out of the off the pen mandrel here. We'll take that, take it and wipe it off a little bit. You can see that it came out pretty nice actually. It's going to look really nice on the ink pen. So we'll go ahead and get set up to turn the maple piece, and then we'll put the pen together and we'll be done. Okay, as with the acrylic blank, we got our maple blank in our lathe here. We got the spacer and the bushing, and on the side bushing and a spacer. We got the tailstock and a life center holding in there nice and tight so it doesn't move. Well, it should be nice and tight. There we go. We'll give it a little extra. And then what we need to do now is turn this thing around and see if we can get our Celtic knot to pop out, like hopefully we will. And I got a spindle roughing gouge to do this blank. I find this is a pretty easy tool to use, very forgiving. So let's make sure we're not stuck on nothing. Give it some speed and see what we can see how this thing comes out here. Start on this end since that's all the excitement's down here anyway. So we'll turn this end around and see if we can get a peek at that Celtic knot here. Well, let's sit down and see what it looks like. Okay, it's starting to come out there. We got a little bit more wood to take off, but we can see that we're getting our Celtic knot. Once we turn this piece down here a little thinner, make the diameter a little smaller, that piece will pop out there as well. So let's keep on going and see what comes up. Okay, we're still got a little bit more to take off. You can see we're getting down to it there. This, as the diameter shrinks, this thing should shrink up a little bit, so it's not quite as large looking. We'll get it down to where it's a little bit smaller and a little nicer looking. We got to clean it up a little bit. Plus, once we sand it, it's gonna clean all up nice. So I'll continue working on that, and we'll get it down to where it's close to being finished, and we'll come back after that. Well, we turned this down to, you can see our Celtic knot, if you can see it. I don't know, it's gotten a lot smaller than it is. The diameter of the blank got smaller. So we're going to continue with this down a little bit more. I got a couple of pieces that have chipped out. We're going to see if we can get those turned down past those, and then we'll start doing some sanding on it. So let's see how we do here. That veneer is very fragile, and sometimes it tends to break out a little bit. Let's take this side down a little bit more. I said the closer we get it to the bushing, the less sanding we have to do, which is always good. So I think, given that this thing's trying to chip out a little bit on my knot here, I think I'm going to go ahead and just hit the sandpaper and get that down to where it needs to be. I don't have much further to go, so I won't bore you with the sanding, and we'll come back after we get it cleaned up. I have sanded our blank up through 600 grit. It's time to put a little finish on it. I did have a couple areas where the veneer chipped out, so what I did is I filled them with some CA glue, hit it with a little bit of a accelerator, and then sanded it smooth. So we'll get some finish on this. What I usually use is on the wood pin blanks is just a little bit of boiled linseed oil, followed with some CA glue, hot glue basically, or super glue. So what I do is just take a little bit of boiled linseed oil, that was too much, and speed the lathe up a little bit. Let's put a little bit on here and see if we can, it makes it bring out the color right away on on the wood, so I like that. We'll go ahead and put a couple of drops of CA glue right on the same spot that we used the boiled linseed oil. And then we put that on there and we just keep rubbing it until the glue dries. And it's more of a feel thing than anything else. You can kind of tell when it starts to feel like it's getting dry. Plus it gives off a really obnoxious smell, so it's very difficult to keep your nose out of it, which is always a good thing. So, alright, well that seems to be pretty good for the first coat. Let's see what happened here. I usually do 3 or 4 coats. Well, that made it look pretty nice. It's kind of popped out the red, white, and blue on our Celtic knot. So let's get a fresh, clean piece of our paper towel. I always use a paper towel. Never use a rag near the lathe. The rag gets caught in the lathe. That will not be good for your fingers. So let's put a couple more drops of CA glue on this. Turn it on and rub it on there again. It's kind of a rinse and repeat kind of thing. Being that the dried CA glue is basically plastic, you could just keep adding coats of CA glue and then take some plastic polish of some sort and polish it up. But I find I like the little bit of a more of a matte finish on my pins, and so I generally don't do that. But I do keep using just a little bit of boiled linseed oil. I got too much on it before. You can use less. A couple of 3 drops of CA glue, and we go back at it again. You feel the glue drying because it actually gives off heat, so you can feel it drying on the other side of the paper towel, and sometimes it actually gets quite uncomfortable to hang on to. That's getting really, really slippery now, so I think that particular coat should dry. So let's take a look at it. Oh yeah, so you get a nice coating on the wood. It kind of brings out the color of the maple and the Celtic knot. I think I'll do one more coat, and then we probably call it good for that. Since it's just a shop project anyway. Again, I put too much boiled linseed oil on there. Let's get a different piece of paper towel. Alright, let's try this again. Just a little bit of it comes out of my little container too fast. I put 3 drops on there. Should be good. Alright, here we go. Rub that on there again. And keep it moving. If you go stuck too much, you can wind up sticking the paper towel to the pin. That's not a good thing. So I can feel that that's dry. It's getting nice and slippery. It slides across it really easy, so we're in good shape. I think I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at it, and I think we're going to call that good for that thing. So we'll come back when we're ready to put these two, the pen and the pencil together, and show you how we do that. Alright, well, it's time to finish these things up and put them together. I got a nylon bushing that fits in the headstock, and there's a matching one that fits in the tailstock. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the cap onto this particular blank. So we put that in there like that and get that started. Sometimes if there's a flaw or whatever, you can kind of cover it up with the clip on the pen, but that one looks pretty good, so I think I'll just put that there. We bring the tailstock up, and that fits into a little bushing on the end, and this is just a press fit. All we're doing is pressing that cap onto the end of there, so that was all I needed for that. So that's pressed on there now. The rest of the pen, this part screws onto the tip at the bottom. You put the ink cartridge in first, though. That would be nice. You put the ink cartridge in. You put that on there like the bottom, and then this part just pushes on, and you're done. So you get a nice ink pen there. With this one has a little stylus on the end of it for using on your iPhone or your iPad. So that's all there is for that one. Okay, it's time to put our pencil together. I have a bushing that goes in, that'll be pressed into the end of our blank. So that goes in there like that to be pressed on. And as I said before, the clips sometimes can be used to cover up some areas that you're not real thrilled about. So I have a little piece right there that I'm not real happy with, so I'll put the clip over it. We'll put that on there. Now that's just bring the tailstock up and squeeze it all together. So we squeeze that in that end, and this thing in that part's going in. Let's make sure we keep our clip where we want it, and screw that on there like that. And get the tailstock to stay where we want, and we can finish pushing that on there. All right. So there's that part. Don't look like much till we push this part through there and screw that on. Now as we push the end of this pen here, the ink should come out if I've done this right. Or the lead, well, that's too far. So we got the lead out where we want it. So there we have a nice, it's got a really large lead. It's really for like an artist pencil, or I'm going to use it around the shop for marking on the turnings and stuff like that, so I get a nice mark on there. It's got a little, at the end of the cap is a little sharpener. Supposedly we can put that on there like that and sharpen the lead, but I haven't tried that yet since it seems to be pretty sharp already. So I will put this back together and we'll give you a final view of the finished products. Okay, here we go. So we finished up our pen and pencil for today. Here's the ink pen. It's like I said, it was Rage Red. It came out pretty nice, I think. It's got a nice color. I like the way the black epoxy filled in underneath with the black and the red kind of actually looks good together. Sometimes you get that brass color showing through from the tube, and I don't particularly like that too much, but that came out nice. Like I said, it's got a little stylus on the end of it for poking around on your iPad or your iPhone or whatever you want to do with it. This is our pen with our Celtic knot. Hopefully it's you can still see it there. It didn't even come out like, there we go. You can see we got the red, white, and blue Celtic knot going around on that pen there, pencil rather, which came out pretty good. It's got a large lead on the end of it, and it'll be handy around the shop for marking on things and doing whatever. So those are my two products for today. It was a lot of fun making them, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video.